You're listening to Alcoholics Alive, where recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous share their experience on how they live AA as a way of life. None of our participants get paid or speak for AA. Here are your hosts, Shank and Wayne. Shank, what time did you get up this morning?
I got up about 4:58.
Well, then you've been sober longer than me. I got up at 5:15.
Nice.
I was in a meeting this past weekend in another state, and I heard two of my favorites. So one of them was, whoever got up the earliest this morning has been sober the longest.
Nice. It's me. Check.
So you have been sober longer than I have by 17 minutes. How
I
about
knew
that?
today was going to be a good day.
And then it's so funny because we had just covered this on shrapnel, but they gave out chips. And the person giving the chips out at the end of it said, "Give your higher power a hand for the chips that you hold." Where does that come from?
Nice. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. So anyway, if you're holding a chip, give your higher power a hand.
Well, I'm pretty positive. Actually, I am positive that when you gave me a 10-year medallion,
Yeah.
you told me that if it melts in my mouth, I can drink again.
Oh, did I really? Well, there's some more shrapnel for you.
There
We
you
need,
go.
we need to add that to the list.
We should.
That used to be a popular statement. Put that chip in your mouth, and if it dissolves, then you can take a drink. So dumb. Hey, welcome if you're out there. This is another, I guess, our second special edition. So we covered a topic several weeks ago it was an update on the Plain Language Big Book, and we actually got a lot of good feedback from it, and a few folks have asked for us to periodically cover other topics in Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's what this is. Remember, we're not experts on AA, but it does seem like I don't know if it's a lack of communication or not enough communication in the fellowship about what's going on sometimes with different things and finances and things at GSO. Not to say they don't try and that our delegates don't try, but it seems like sometimes just relying on that structure and an annual report is maybe insufficient. So what is our topic today, Shane?
Our topic today is the Grapevine.
Whoa.
So this is the Grapevine's birthday month, June.
80 years.
80 years.
Happy birthday, Grapevine.
Happy birthday, Grapevine.
That's a long time.
It sure is. So I have once again created a timeline. I will admit, I am not an expert, and there is so much information about the Grapevine via past reports that I got a little overwhelmed. So I kind of hit the high notes
Yeah,
of
keep it
what
simple.
was interesting to me or what I think kind of fit to some questions that I have about the Grapevine and kind of what's going on with it. But what I wanted to start with, Wayne,
What's
is
that?
I wanted to start off with a little positivity here and ask you, what do you enjoy about the Grapevine? What's your favorite thing, or what's a way that you have used the Grapevine that you felt like was helpful to someone or yourself?
One of the it's a good question, and just so you know, I've been a subscriber of the Grapevine for over 30 years now. So it's been kind of a love-hate relationship with it, but I have continued to support it. I have the app. I pay for the app. I have the print subscription. What I like, one of the things I like most about it is actually seeing articles in there from people that I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And I used to when it would when it was just the print subscription, it would come out. The first thing I would do is I'd look through to see if there was anybody from my state in there and try to figure out who
Now,
they were.
have you been published?
I have. One time I was published in July 1996
All right.
in the Grapevine and in the very first issue of Lavinia in July
Whoa.
in July of '96.
You're a
So back then
double
they just
winner.
double winner. Back then they just kind of translated the the English version into Spanish. And I've written a couple of other articles that have not gotten published.
Mm,
So I'm
didn't
sure
make the cut.
they may get published one time. And so anyway, you can go read that if you want to in July '96. So I like that. I like. I mean, I've got a couple of stories when I first subscribed to it. I remember I was probably sober somewhere between 9 months and a year, and there was a story that this guy wrote about how he used the word power a lot in this story, and how he had found power in AA and through the steps to overcome, difficulties in life, and it had an impact on me. And I don't know why I remember that story, but I remember telling my sponsor about it. And if you've ever sponsored anybody, you've had this experience. I was telling him all this stuff that was in this article, and he's like, "Yeah, Jerry, that's the same stuff I've been trying to tell you for the last 6 months." But you know what? I couldn't hear it from him, but I heard it through this article,
Yeah.
and it's looking back on it, it's funny. So that was, so I have had articles like that resonated with me. I've liked the jokes in the back. I've never personally have liked that they've changed the name of it over the years, but where they'll like publish non-AA stuff in there, or they'll have stuff on like alcoholism or treatment, and it's like general. I personally don't like that. I think it kind of shows a little bit of affiliation and endorsement of that type of stuff. But you know what? It's fine. Throughout the years, sometimes they'll take it out and then they'll put it back in. Now, I did have one experience where I was in the Cayman Islands on vacation one time, and I was trying to find an AA meeting. And I got connected to this guy who's like, "Yeah, we've got a meeting here on the island," and he came and picked me up and took me to the meeting and took an interest in me. I mean, he just was very helpful. And I went back to a second meeting, and I think he may have like contacted me at the hotel and said, "Hey, we got the meetings this night." And he was very, very helpful. I get home from vacation and I go to the mailbox and I get the Grapevine. The Grapevine's in there, the current issue. And I swear I opened it up and there was an article that this dude from Cayman Islands had written.
That's crazy.
So yeah, so stuff like that happens. So that was pretty impactful.
That's cool.
Yeah. Of course, now we're on Instagram, and they've
YouTube.
got the YouTube, they've got the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't. I guess I don't have much of an opinion on that right now. We'll probably get maybe into a little more of that later.
You know,
And
I like that I did receive issues of the Grapevine while I was incarcerated. And in looking through all of the information, I know that there is always a really big conversation surrounding literature, pamphlets, books, materials for people who are incarcerated. And yes, my I did have a subscription that was gifted to me while I was incarcerated. Now, at that time, this was in 2013, 2014, they came in the mail in these little black
Plastic
bags,
wrapper bags, yes.
and they wouldn't let me have them, and I had to go to the mail center. Like they thought I had was having contraband or porn sent in, and I didn't know. I was like, I don't know what that is. I was just like so full of fear. Anyway, they were the grapevines and it was fine. They read through them and then I got several back issues, but um I did enjoy having the grapevine. I was sober for 3 months when I went to prison, so I didn't know a ton about AA. One thing that I still have in that book that I have from when I was incarcerated was I cut out um, I believe the responsibility statement and also the preamble, maybe, because I
Hmm.
do remember being told by someone at my home group, like, hey, if you can have a meeting with just a few people, you need to be doing that. You need to be sponsoring people. And so I did have that available. So that was cool.
Yeah.
I like that the steps and traditions are in there, or at
Hmm.
least the steps.
Both, yeah.
That was helpful. But I can't say that any of the women that I tried to help, I don't know, where I was incarcerated, it was a closed security prison. Just having stuff in your locker, like you knew someone was cool if they had a lot of
Right.
mail or if they had a lot of books or photos. And so people just like to collect stuff. So people had AA books because I told them they were an alcoholic and needed to read it. And they had grapevines and everything else I was giving them and never read it, never looked at it. I couldn't get anyone sober making them read a grapevine or if they voluntarily read it. But I do think some people kind of related to it. So,
Yeah. The I bought a subscription for my mom. Now my mom was not a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, but yeah, I don't know why. I just one time I was feeling generous and gave her a gift subscription, and she loved it.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she
I
loved it. She, huh?
I used to, when I lived with a family member after I got out of prison, couple family members, I would leave them out because I thought that this family member needed to get sober. And I was told very directly by a sponsor, like, stop mentioning and like stop doing that. But I would leave grapevines lying around and she would read them.
Yeah.
She's like, these little
This,
stories are so great. It was never
hmm.
though like, wow, I relate to this and I need to stop drinking. It was like, hey, can you bring me a beer? I'm gonna keep reading this little magazine. So
Yeah, and I mean, I've used them a lot over the years with taking them into jails and prisons and treatment centers. So it's a good handy tool to bring in to places like that, and have tried throughout the years of getting like subscriptions into certain prisons and jails, and I've never. It's just my personal experiences. I've never had a whole lot of success consistently at those subscriptions getting to the people that needed them.
yeah.
So sometimes just sending a subscription to a facility is not, it sounds good and feels good, but sometimes it doesn't go where it's supposed to. You're better off hand carrying, old issues in.
I know, yeah, for one of the facilities, well, the prison where I was housed that I now go back in, I just could never get the Grapevine subscription, even to the meeting space or even to the contact person. So now, if people, if there's a committee or a home group or whatever that wants to give in that way, I'm like, hey, you're just going to have to send the subscription to me and I will
Yeah.
carry it in because I have a memo that says that I can carry it in. Um,
Yes.
but you just drive down the highway and throw money out the window if you just send it
Yeah.
to the facility.
Yeah. And I've always thought that and again, this is based on a lot of experience, that we exaggerate the impact that the grapevine has on people that are like incarcerated or in treatment. I know that they enjoy reading it, but we sometimes talk like it got them sober, or that they would not have gotten sober without it, and it's just not true
Well,
at
since you
all.
bring that up,
Hmm.
let me give you a little rundown
Yeah.
of the Grapevine.
Okay.
Okay. The AA Grapevine was created by six AA members, four women and two men. So this information is taken directly from AA.org if you're curious.
You mean there were actually women involved in the early 40s? I thought it was
Yes,
just
there,
all like
yes, there were.
white conservative men.
Four women, two
How about
men.
that? Okay.
The first issue was published June 1944, so several years after the founding of AA. It offered first-person stories, news, notes on current happenings at the central office at that time, and reports of new groups in North America, book reviews, magazine reprints, pieces written by non-AAs, including some well-known literary figures. So that was the segment you were talking about earlier.
You know what was interesting in that those first issues in 1944?
Hmm.
They have articles in there from A members' children.
That's
It's very
intense.
it's very interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's intense. All right, so 1945, at the request of groups, it became the National Journal of AA. In 1949, expanded to include members Canada, Europe, and then it was changed to the International Journal of AA.
Hmm.
Later issues after that reported on developments, growth in the fellowship worldwide, the birth of the general service structure, service meetings, publication of the third and fourth editions of the Big Book,
Hmm.
which I found that very interesting. You know, if it were, I know that we now have like these huge service conferences and like where we are, there's the Southeastern and da da da. But I do think that it is interesting that they were reporting on third and fourth editions of the Big Book.
Hmm. Yeah, you can go back and search those articles. They were basically talking about, that they were coming, and then they were asking for stories. Also, they were asking people to write stories.
I could see where, with the way we are today, I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but the way we are today, it seems a little redundant to talk about all of these things and all these different avenues. But if the point is that some of these service materials, some of these pamphlets, some of the are reaching different people that other materials are not, then I would think you need to be redundant and talk about it in the Grapevine too. Because I don't remember seeing anything, I could be wrong, but I don't remember seeing anything about the plain language in the Grapevines.
There was not. No, so there's been nothing specifically about the PLBB or the fifth edition in the Grapevines. There is a under their segment called AA News
Hmm.
in 2023. It was October or November. There was an article in there. I mean, an interview where they interviewed the board chair, and he briefly mentioned that they were working on the PLBB and the fifth edition, but there was no. That was it. It was just a brief mention. So they've not. It's interesting that they've not reported on that. You think that would have been a good way to get the fellowship to know more about the PLBB?
Well, we're going to get to that when we talk about subscriptions. So hold that thought.
Yeah. The I think a couple of other things interesting. I mean, Bill did introduce the traditions
Hmm.
through the Grapevine in '46, I believe that was. Yeah. And then the Grapevine editor at that time is the guy that wrote the original preamble. In '47, I think that was. He took kind of some stuff from the forward to the first edition,
Hmm.
and then wrote the preamble, which, as you know, is another controversial thing that got changed. But carry on.
All right, moving along. In 1986, the General Service Conference reaffirmed the magazine's place in AA with an advisory action that recognized it as the International Journal of AA. 2001, the Conference Committee on Grapevine recommended that Lavinia continue to be published by the AA Grapevine and supported by the General Service Board as a service to the fellowship. So I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting because maybe that is the way, like, is that where Grapevine is headed? Maybe.
Well, it could be. Yeah. So if you're listening, then what that means is that the Lavinia is basically not completely supported by subscriptions, and it's what we call a service piece. So there are in fact group contributions that go to fund the Lavinia, and throughout the years, there's been support in the fellowship to have the Grapevine go that way, to where it's more of a service piece, and we just pay for it out of the general service funds.
So 2017, Grapevine was almost shut down. It was saved because it aids in 12-step work for treatment centers and prisons, things along that line. And that brings us to 2021,
Yeah.
which is we started a 5-year plan to be self-supporting, for the Grapevine to be self-supporting in the 4th year.
Which
That would be 2025.
2025. Okay.
So my question here, that is just if you're listening, that is just a very brief history of things in my mind that I thought made sense so that I could ask some questions.
Yeah.
My question for you, is the Grapevine self-supporting?
Well, no, it's not.
Okay,
So,
hang on.
yep.
On the Grapevine website, there is a service fee. This is what really disturbs me, is on the website, it says we're self-supporting. This is from aagrapevine.org. The AA Grapevine is entirely self-supporting through the sale of magazine and related items. It receives none of the group contributions sent to the General Service Office. An important part of self-support at all levels, including group, district, and area, is to subscribe and purchase other materials to assure the Grapevine and Lavinia continue to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, so to answer your question is that at least for the last 3 years, it's off and on. It's been longer. The Grapevine has not been completely supported by subscriptions, and
I just find it a little deceptive to have this on the AA Grapevine website. I understand that, I mean, sure, for me, I've used the Grapevine. I had a subscription for a number of years, and, I don't want to think about it ceasing to exist. However, if it is not self-supporting, then why doesn't it say that on the AA Grapevine website? Why doesn't it say, hey, we have been having to draw funds from other areas. Please subscribe, let everyone know. Like, we have all these other exciting things coming up. We have a podcast. You can read all of the back issues, just get people excited about it. And I know that has been tried to be done right now. Currently, there's the Carry the Message Project 2024 going on, attempting to do that. But when you go to the website, it makes it sound like everything is fine.
yeah, yeah, and even the reporting coming out of GSO, and even the reports from delegates, I, I think some of them do probably give us the information, but the sense of urgency around what's really going on, I've not seen anyone actually report on that. And the reality of it is, in 2022, they pulled 1.1 million from the reserve fund. In
So
2023,
what
yeah,
is the reserve fund from what?
from the general service budget.
So that is just money that we and groups and districts are sending to GSO,
That that's right.
not for the Grapevine.
That's correct. It's money for AAWS to operate.
Okay.
And so that would be group contributions and literature sales, non-grapevine literature sales.
And Grapevine
And
is totally separate.
it is. Yep. Totally separate company and board.
Okay.
In 2023, they took, I shouldn't say they took, we gave them 565,000 to cover their shortfall. And we're projected this year to give them about another $560,000 to cover shortfalls. So in essence, we're not the Grapevine is not being supported by subscriptions and their own book sales. We are subsidizing the Grapevine through group contributions and through the reserve fund via contributions and literature sales. It's a fact.
I
But you won't hear anyone say it that way. But that's
Well,
a
here's
fact.
the thing that is upsetting to me, I think, is I have been taught in Alcoholics Anonymous how to have a prudent reserve, how to not live above my means. Listen, I people have helped me in Alcoholics Anonymous. They've helped me learn and seek out people to be able to learn more. I didn't have that education coming in here. However, I just can't fathom how it isn't presented in a way of here is exactly what happened. I was taught that if I needed help, I could ask for help. I needed to be honest. I needed to be open and willing. I needed to go to someone and say, "Hey, I cannot afford to go to the state convention this year. I know it's only $25. I can't afford it. What can I do? I cannot afford to go. I would love to go on this spiritual retreat that is non-AA, but I can't make that work. What can I do?" And people helped me and they said,
Yep.
"Hey, you know, come come clean my house, come do some yard work, come do something." And I was able to do that. I just wasn't taught to be deceptive
Yep.
in what was going on. And I'm pretty in tune with AA. I don't know everything about AA. I don't know everything about the Grapevine or the Lavinia. But I do feel like if it had been mentioned we were bankrolling the Grapevine millions of dollars, that I would have heard that.
Yeah, you would have. And it's like I said, it's not I don't think it's been presented correctly. I think the information is out there. You got to really dig and find it or ask the right questions. But in and I don't know how many delegate reports I've reviewed and you've reviewed over the last couple of months. It's at least 15.
Hmm.
I think there were two where they probably reported more detail than others with a little more of sense of urgency.
Hmm.
But the majority of them, it's just here's the information, and it is. I think it's a lack of responsibility. I mean, we are taught to be self-supporting and to be responsible, and to not report to the fellowship specifically. Hey, the Grapevine took almost $600,000 last year from the general fund, from the reserve fund,
Well, and the thing
and
is,
now,
too, if the fellowship at large, if the information was presented that way and the fellowship at large was like, "Hey, we're fine with that. We're going to keep sending money to GSO. Let's bankroll it, no problem," that would be a different situation.
yep,
But
that's right.
I
They,
personally, as an AA member in North Carolina, do not feel like that's the way the information is presented, and not necessarily from our delegate or anyone specific, but AA as a whole. Like on the AA Grapevine webpage, it says we are self-supporting through literature sales,
yep,
and that is not true.
it's not true. No, no, they're not. At least they haven't been. Uh, the Hey, if you work for the Grapevine, or if you're on the committee or trustee committee, or we know you work hard.
Yes.
We appreciate everything that you do. And I know it's not an easy situation to be in, but it seems that we could get a little more, I guess, accurate and information on exactly what's going on. Here's the interesting thing, Shank, is that, and this has been an ongoing debate and kind of question for a number of years. Bill Wilson wrote that, after all, the Grapevine is to be their voice, talking about the fellowship, their newspaper, and I'm quite sure they will support it. The reality is the Grapevine is not supported by the fellowship, right? So I think we're projected to have 52,000 roughly print subscriptions this year. We've got about 2 million members. It's less than 3% of the fellowship, and it's been this way forever.
But
Less
here's
than
the thing,
3% of the fellowship.
how many subscriptions do you have?
Well, I've got 2 of my own. I got 3 that just recently purchased for a facility. And I've got probably 4 gift subscriptions that I continue to support. So that's about 10.
Okay. So
right.
many people that I know that have a subscription have more than one for those reasons.
Yeah. So it's
So
actually,
it's
the
even
numbers
less.
are less. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So less than 3% of the fellowship support it. That right there speaks volumes about the actual impact. And I don't know why we want to get all emotional and get dramatic about it, about how the impact is, but obviously it's not a big impact.
Well,
And,
and listen, I'm sure all these things have been brought up. I'm not saying that I have any new ideas, but have we considered scaling back? One issue a quarter,
it's a good
black and
suggestion.
white.
Good suggestion.
Just shorten it up some. Like for a period of time, why can't our 5-year plan be, we're going to be honest with the fellowship, we're going to have it on the front page of the website, we're going to scale back. I know it's not that easy just to completely change something. I know it's not. But I mean, we are bankrolling millions of dollars to
Yep.
something that is not being utilized in the way it's described.
Yep.
The Grapevine currently has been trudging forward a path of going digital and having other media out there. And I think that looking to the future, that's great. Like we need to continue to grow to what the world, how people get information, which is online, which is podcasts, which is sure, maybe social media. I don't know what all is necessary, but to continue to hemorrhage cash and keep the publication the exact same as it is just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. And our solution, I think we've looked at all that stuff throughout the years, but the solution is it's always ended up here. This is what they'll say. Well, it's such an impact to treatment and correctional facilities and so other many people. We need to keep it going. And they develop another 5-year plan. At least since I've been sober, I could be wrong, but we've had 4 5-year plans. Maybe it's 3, but I think we've had 4 5-year plans of how to get the Grapevine back on track financially, and none of them have ever worked. And I think part of the solution is we need to elect better delegates and trustees that are willing to make some tough decisions. I'm not saying you're not, if you're out there listening, but the results are the results. We're getting ready to lose more money this year for about 50,000 people. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense.
Here's my other question or my other comment. I don't know. Okay, so we did Grapevine title books.
Mm-hmm.
We did, okay. Why are we continuing to print new Grapevine books?
Well, I think it's a few reasons. One is there's probably a request for some of that stuff, or there may be a small need in the fellowship, but typically it's because the new book, initially when it rolls out, people buy it. And so it helps the literature sales, which ultimately helps the revenue and the margin. So that would be, if I were running the organization, that's probably why I would roll out a new book is to increase revenue.
But the books
I'm not
are
saying it does.
crowdsourced, right? From past editions of the Grapevine. It's
They
usually a
are.
compilation book. Okay.
Yes, and you could easily put it
So,
digital. You could easily do it digital and not do a print and
well,
save
there
money.
are some digital, I believe. I think that
There
we
are.
did cover one of those in the season where we did the Grapevine titles.
Okay.
So that's cool. It's looking forward. That's great.
Yeah. Even if you look though at so we publish the results of every like how many books they've sold annually in the annual report. The numbers are small. I mean, the biggest book last year, or the most sold Grapevine book, I think, was that emotional sobriety one. Sold about 12,000 copies.
Yeah.
Most of them are way, way below that. Some of them only sell less than 100 copies a year. I mean, it's not like they're making great money on them.
Yeah.
You look at the time and the effort to publish one.
People work really hard.
Yeah, for not much. So
Yeah.
anyway, and the digital strategy is probably a good direction to go in, but they're
Hmm.
not revenue generators. They never
Yeah.
will be.
Yeah.
You're not gonna you're not gonna fix the financial shortfall by selling $3 app.
Right.
And we
Because we're not putting ads. We're not, right? Like you're
no
not
no.
promoting.
And the funny thing about that is now we're reporting on downloads
Hmm.
instead of paid subscriptions on the app. So I think you'd given me a figure. Was it last year or this year? There's like 26,000 downloads,
Hmm.
but only 4,600 of them are paid.
Hmm.
So the it's I don't know. You're not going to make up a $500,000 shortfall on a $3 app.
Well, okay. So the 5-year plan from 2011 or 2021,
2021, yeah.
um, to be self-supporting was by the fourth year,
Mm-hmm.
which would be 2025.
Right.
So what are the chances that the Grapevine is able to be self-supporting by next year?
Well, based on the numbers I looked at, there's no way. They'd have to drastically reduce expenses and increase revenue. And they're not going to do that by selling a few extra books, the new book, and through the app. Subscriptions are expected to go down again. And so I think that it's just we got our heads in the sand and we don't want to face the reality of it, that something drastically needs to change quickly. The other thing about pulling money from the reserve fund, this is going to be probably a different podcast. I don't want to go into it now, but the reserve fund is now below, it's like at 6 months. It's somewhere between 6 and 7 months, and we're supposed to be between 9 and 12 months. So we continue to drain that, which again is fiscally irresponsible.
Yeah.
Hey, it's great that we've got money in a reserve fund to use,
Yes.
but at some point, if you keep spending more than you have, the reserve fund's just going to keep dwindling down,
Hmm.
and they just keep pulling money from it. So make some tough decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I have loved the Grapevine. I do not currently have a subscription, any subscriptions. Um, I think there's one for one of the facilities. That's a whole other story, but I do enjoy reading them. We have them at my home group. I enjoy reading them there. I do read them, but um, what was my experiences when I couldn't just go to an AA meeting, I couldn't pick up the phone anytime I wanted to. I was working the steps through letters and with, women that I barely knew. Um, What made the most impact on me were the women that showed up every single week, no matter what, to bring an AA meeting into that facility.
Yep.
And if they brought a grapevine, if they brought a pamphlet, if they couldn't even bring their book in that day, none of that mattered. They were carrying the message of Alcoholics Anonymous through their actions. And I
Yep.
knew, I thought they had been sober a million years. And it wasn't until I got out that I realized, oh, they only have a few more years than I do. And they were willing to do that. So that 12th step, carrying the message, those women were willing to do that. And we had a meeting on Monday night with 23 women at a facility. And, we did have literature available for them. We have books. And I will buy 100, a
Yep.
million books before I even have a second thought about a grapevine.
Yep.
If I'm
That's
able to get literature for the facility, it is going to be the big book. There are other things, yes, that if there are funds for it, absolutely happy to get other literature. But those women were so happy that there were people there who had experience in getting sober that like even truly even having the big book, they would have taken our word for whatever we said, however we said it,
yep.
um, because we were there and we're not paid employees and we don't have any say over what they do or when they go to lunch or count time or quiet time. Um,
Well, that's what's important. That's what helps an alcoholic is the one-on-one interaction. And you don't need special literature or grapevines for that. I mean,
when there are some facilities that even since 2020 have not had their meetings started back up yet. And I think even non-alcoholics see the work that Alcoholics Anonymous members do from facility to facility. And it's always so frustrating. Um, but people see that, and then you make connections, and you are able, after diligently trying for years, to get meetings started back in facilities. And that is what corrections work is really about, in my opinion. Not to get on my soapbox, but it's not what literature can we throw at these people, these poor, pitiful, dumb people who are incarcerated. It's how can we diligently show up, be sober members of Alcoholics Anonymous, be nice to the staff. If
yep.
they say no 20 times, the 21st time they may say, you know what, yes, we are ready for an AA meeting.
Yep.
It just is so annoying to me that corrections and incarcerated people are always used as this like token of, well, they need it and
It,
we need extra literature and different literature and we need to keep the grapevine going because it's the only hope they get. Yes, there is hope in that. Yes. Okay. I loved reading stories about, I love the July annual prison issue.
yeah.
But if it were so important and if it really got people sober in treatment centers and in prisons, then you would have 4 pages devoted to specifically those alcoholics in every single issue.
Yep. That's right. Well, there's no doubt we use the whole correctional spin as a way to get stuff approved and to pull on people's heartstrings. And I've said for a long time it's exaggerated, and we do use it as a kind of a tool to, I don't know, shame people into making decisions that are not very fiscally responsible.
Hmm.
So, hey, if you've made a contribution to GSO or to if you bought some literature, non-grapevine literature, you are now subsidizing my grapevine subscription. So I appreciate it.
Your 10 subscriptions.
I mean, no, it sounds funny, but it's true. Yeah. So I mean, money that has been sent as a contribution to general service, or if you've bought AAWS literature, that money being pulled from the reserve fund to support Grapevine is now being used to subsidize subscriptions. There's just that's just fact.
Yeah.
So thank you. If uh, yeah, so I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I
More
guess
I more honesty, more open-mindedness, willingness, information. And if I don't know what the concern is, just like sometimes there's a concern about all of our meeting minutes need to be password protected. And listen,
so dumb.
the non-alcoholics that I know that I am a recovered alcoholic and Alcoholics Anonymous have never once said, you know what, I was Googling around and I saw that conference that just happened. There's a lot of contentious issues happening. I just don't see non-alcoholics going to the Grapevine website and I even think of like the people I deal with on a regular basis, let's say at the prison, my contacts, uh, if you meet the warden, if you and you give them information, if they go to the Grapevine website to see what it is, to see if they want it in their facility, and they see, oh wow, here on the Grapevine website it says they've been having trouble keeping this thing going.
It might.
Does that mean that they're going to be like, wow, AA is really terrible and the Grapevine, wow, such a POS? Like, no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. And what used to get reported on most was the decline in subscriptions. We need to start reporting more on, hey, look at the money we just pulled from the reserve fund.
yeah.
That actually might get some people's attention more. So
And
some
people
better.
may be okay with that. If the fellowship at
That's right.
large was like, hey, listen, I love that my money is going to subsidize the Grapevine, that would be a different story.
It would be. Yeah. Well, be careful. It might be headed that way. So
Well,
they might
or the
turn it into a
Grapevine,
service piece.
maybe a service piece.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. But it seems to me the fellowship has spoke by the lack of subscriptions, and I would even argue the lack of apps. I mean, and even like, one thing we really haven't covered is so like Instagram and the app, they really don't do anything to help a newcomer. They don't help a person get sober. They're kind of cool and they give us some like legitimacy out in the social media world and but I mean you're not going to get somebody sober by having 12,000 followers on Instagram. Then there's nothing on the Grapevine app that is going to like get anybody sober. And I would even argue some of that stuff is controversial, like the daily maintenance checkup, the daily spiritual maintenance thing, where it tells you what's your morning ritual. It doesn't say ritual. What does it say? Morning exercise or something like that. Then did you go to a meeting? Did you call another AA member? And then your evening thing. So if you check all four, evidently you're spiritually fit. Come on. So,
Well,
and
and
the other
here's,
thing
go ahead.
the other thing I would say about the podcast is that I get a little concerned that over time it actually becomes like the voice
Hmm.
of Alcoholics Anonymous, and people kind of look to that as like, well, that's AA there, right? And I've enjoyed a lot of the episodes. Some of them I could do without, but I don't know. I'd be careful if for Alcoholics Anonymous that's supposed to be kind of neutral and that that doesn't become like the true voice of AA in some people's mind.
Yeah. Well, and here's the last thing I'll say about how no one knows what's going on with the Grapevine. There was a floor action that was not heard at the late, or they didn't get to at the latest conference, and it was recommended that AA Grapevine Board develop a 5-year financial plan for the Grapevine with the goal to reduce shortfalls and increase revenue to be brought back to the 2025 Conference Committee on Grapevine and Lavinia. So you have told me that in 2021 there was a 5-year plan. So I'm not saying that every single person who also is going to present a floor action at the conference should know everything about Grapevine. But this proves to me that the information is not being distributed in a way where we already know there's a 5-year plan and we're already supposed to be self-supporting by 2025,
Good
the
point.
4th year of the 5-year plan.
Yeah, it's a very good point. That shines the light on kind of what's really going on.
There you go.
And I think they did say that they needed to do a new 5-year plan for Lavinia, but
That did happen. They
yeah,
recommended
but nothing for the actual grape.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, if they're going to make up, I'll be curious to see how they're going to make up a $500,000 shortfall selling a $3 app. So let's see what happens. I mean, so what can you do out there? I don't know. Maybe if you're concerned about it, dig into the financials, dig into GSO quarterly report, talk to your delegate, call the Grapevine desk. But know that right now subscriptions are not fully supporting the Grapevine, and it appears that the fellowship's not really supporting it, with less than 3% actually subscribing. And even if we had 30,000 apps out there paid, it still doesn't cover the shortfall. So, Shank, I think that might be a wrap.
I think that's a wrap.
So listen, go today on your app and check your spiritual. Hold on a second before we close down.
I don't like that. That implies that is AA.
I understand. Let's see what that does. Hold on one second. I'm curious here. Oh, here it is. Daily spiritual maintenance checklist. Morning practice. So you can check that. If you did something this morning, you check that. Then that's number 1. Number 2 is go to a meeting.
Well, I don't go to a meeting every day, so I've already failed.
That's right. Me either. Then call another AA member. So you got to actually call. Since we didn't call each other, so we still got to call somebody when we get off the phone here.
Okay.
Then an evening practice. So according to the AA Grapevine app, that is your daily spiritual maintenance checklist. And so it tells you how many of these you've checked off. So now it's basically saying that the program is a morning practice, going to a meeting, I guess according to this, every day, calling another AA member every day, and an evening practice. I personally think that they should do away with that. I mean, that's not. But see, that's one of my concerns now, is that people think that's AA.
People think that 90 and 90 is AA.
They sure do, don't they?
Our inner group put a 90 and 90 checklist in the back of the printed meeting schedules. I'm still not over that.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, hey, if you're out there, go online and subscribe to the Grapevine, or don't. There's a July issue out for prisons. Check that out and download the app.
Do you know the name of the jokes section? You know it.
At Wit's End?
At Wit's End. Here we go. Keep coming back. I didn't much believe in prayer until I came to AA. In my first meeting, my prayers were answered. I prayed for money and someone handed me a basket full of it. That's Andy from Kansas.
Andy from Kansas. Thank you for that.
There you go.
And if you're out there, be free today.
Freedom.
Thanks for listening. If you have a comment, suggestion, or just need help, you can email Shank and Wayne at freedom@alcoholicsalive.com. Remember, we're recovered members of Alcoholics Anonymous, but we do not speak for Alcoholics Anonymous, nor do we get paid. Join us next week for another great episode.